All right. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we want to welcome you all to the Hello LLC. If you don't know what Hello stands for helping entrepreneurs leverage leading edge optimizations. More importantly, it's about helping everyone live life optimally. And today on our Hello Live Pivot in Living Color, in Metaverse, that you guys can also come and join us in the Hello Plaza from your cell phone, from your laptop, from your iPad, and your VR headsets, because the future is already here. We have an amazing guest with us today. Today's title is The Power of Intuition, Intuition with Dr. Paul Kellogg. He is an international acclaimed practical intuitive. He has over 50 years in his career, and he's appeared over 100 videos, 100 radio shows, television shows, and he's conducted workshops from around the world. So awesome about this. Not only that, he's been practicing this with leadership and building teams and management and communications. And not only that, he's led companies and talked at American Red Cross, the National Council of Aging, St. Louis Public Schools, and his simple master of the soul cycle and one unique life purpose. And without further ado, Dr. Paul, it is amazing to have you with us today, sir. Please share with us, what sparked this, hey, you know what? I think I got this intuitive thing. I think I'm going to take this on the road. What sparked that?
Well, David, I got to tell you, Tara, I got to tell you, that's one of the most dynamic, uplifting introductions I think I've ever had. I think we're recording this. I'm going to take that. I'm going to copy it and use it. That was tremendous. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think all my life that there was this knowingness that there was more to life than just what I was meeting at school or hearing in my church or, whatever it was. There was something that was inner that was really calling out. When I was very young, I would sense what was happening with people and say things, and they would kind of look at me. Well, that's just this little child with their imagination. But later on, it would come true. And when I was about 10 years old, my father had a very small avocational farm. We had a couple cows, and they would always be calving. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, waking my dad up and telling her Bessie the cow was in trouble and need help. And sure enough, she was delivering early. The calf was breached. They had to, and I also got to watch all that, which was incredible, right? You're 10 years old to see the birth of something amazing. But it just always was something that was a part of my life. As I was growing up, I often felt self-conscious about it. I felt gun-shy about it. Sometimes friends would make fun of it or call me some weird name that would always pull down my sense of confidence and self-esteem. And that started me on things. The other key factor that really kind of put this into orbit for me was when my father passed on. I was 16 years old. And the night before, I had turned to look at him, and I had this super funny feeling inside. It was as though he was not there. And of course, he was sitting in his chair, but there was something that disappeared. And I woke up in the middle of the night having these weird dreams about him. Turned out later, my mother was having the same kind of dreams, that he was leaving the family and so on. And I got up early in the morning, and the paramedics were leaving, and he had passed on. And I remember saying to my mother, I looked at his body there, and I said, "That's not my father. He's not there anymore." And I could tell, without intellectually knowing to be able to define it, there was something that had gone on. And then I remember the night before, we went to a lecture shortly after that and heard all about the ideas of people being intuitive, people being souls or energies, life forces. I'm a soul with a physical body, not a physical body with a soul floating out there somewhere. This is me. This is energy. And we talked about, everybody has sensitivity. We're all sensitive. We're all psychic, if you will, except for let's kick out that word and just say it's sensitive. We all feel and sense energies. Everything's energy. So that kind of launched me, you guys, into really exploring it. And very quickly, I found that I had enough of an experiential awareness that I wanted to share it with people and help other people to relax with that sensitivity a little bit. So that kind of kicked the things off.
I first of all, I love that, because anytime we're talking about intuition or, empath or, sensitivity and understanding that, it's right up my alley. But I also had a chuckle under, just to kind of underneath here, because you talk about the birth of a cow, and seeing that, living on a farm, growing up on a farm. I had the exact same experience, and when you talk about that intuition, I would find often or not, my intuitive skills would pick up a lot more with animals than they would with humans. And so when you shared that, I actually remember a time where I was about 6 years old, same thing, cow giving birth right there. And I remember my father used to drive trucks, so he was away. And when I got to speak with him, he was all the way up on the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. And that calling home was about $10 or $20 a minute. So it was really expensive. And I took a whole 5 minutes to tell my dad about the birth of this cow. And it cost us like a whole $50 or $60. And back then in the 80s, like that's a lot of money. So point being is, when you share that story and when you share about just the intuitive things that you had happening as a young child, not knowing what that is, I think a lot of us experience that, and we don't talk about it enough, which is why I'm so excited to have this conversation today, is because when we do talk about it, people normalize it, and then we go, I have that same feeling, or that happened to me. And that likeness will then create a curiosity. And when curiosity is sparked, we are all types of open, ready to receive, check things out, and we're not in a state of fear. And, that leads me into kind of our next question of, how does, practical intuition really affect not only you as personally, but in a leadership type of way, in a team dynamic? How is that as a unit really able to display like a superpower? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, that great question, Tara. Let me preface it just a little bit. I showed you this guy earlier. This is just a graphic representation of energy. It can have all kinds of, and this is just one version of that. It can have all kinds of colorations and so on. But because we're energy, that energy is constantly emanating out. We're like radio receivers and transmitters. So we're constantly sending out energies via our thoughts and feelings, and we're constantly being bombarded by by different energies, people thinking of us. It's being psychic or being sensitive. There's no distance and there's no time with that. Energy can go at least the speed of light. So somebody thinking about me over in Australia, I can instantly pick that up and feel that it comes into that aura, if you will. And so we're always interacting with each other. So imagine 50 of these people all standing right next to each other. All the energies are blending and interacting and working. The top number one thing of working with energy is discernment. What is me? What's my energy? What's my pivot? How am I grounded in myself? And what's the outer? What am I picking up from David? What is he picking up from me? Vice versa. So learning in the work that we do, learning to discern that energy, where is it coming from? And then learning to work with a sense of inner guidance, which we all have, whether you call that God or the universe or angels or guides, it's whatever you call it, doesn't make any difference. That we have that. We have that ability to tune into that and see the facts of what's happening in our lives from that bigger picture of energy. So that was one of the big things. As I did my first lecture first radio show when I was 19 years old, and I started to see how people, as you were saying, Tara, they wanted to understand us. They feel things and they don't understand what it is. They have these dreams that come true. They have visions and so on. We'll talk about the different ways that people perceive that energy here in just a minute. But just to know that there's more to life than what's meeting our physical energy, that spirit, that spiritual side of things, not religious, not dogmatic, that spirit side of things. It's incredible what that resource can do for us. So that preface to go to your question, Tara, when people start to realize that there is that energy going on, number one, they'll have more empathy, more awareness, more benevolence for the people that they're working with. Because there's stuff going on in that sales meeting. There are things going on with the client. They may be thinking about their family while somebody's trying to close the sale. What's happening with all of that? So by being very relaxed inside here, and there's tons of ways to do that with meditations and energy techniques and so on, they can start to be clear in their sensitivity about what's taking place. Is it the right time to have that meeting? My sensitivity, my intuitions tell me now's not the time. We better have that in the afternoon because the energy is expressing that with all the varied people that are involved. Is it challenging for leaders to do that? Absolutely, because you're dealing with 20 other people on your team and you got to navigate all that. So the one top thing from a leadership point of view is being very clear about here. This is me. This is who I am. These are my core values. These are my standards. Because when I set that in place, everything's going to bounce off of that. I'm going to know what's clear, that I can allow that to filter in and work with it. I can know what's not in my standards and keep that buffered out and then work with it from that more detached point of view.
Yeah. Well, busted it wide open here.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for the preface of that, because a lot of people don't understand that. We dive right into the meat and potatoes, but it's so critical to understand the playing field. And when you start talking about like the discernment, and I know I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, but because you just brought it up,
yeah,
a lot of people go, and we talk about how women have, kind of built-in intuition, or might be a little more intuitive than the male gender. I think it's just, we are, attached or detached from that mode. And so men might be a little more detached from it because it hasn't been society standards to be attached or have that linkage and be okay with it. But when you talk about discernment, one thing that pops up in my head, I know other people in our community talk about it, is, how do I discern what is intuitive and what is just my voice in my head?
And assuming. And
making an assumption because of past experiences.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually had it in our Power Soul Network, a panel on intuition, practical intuition, we call it. And this came up. How do you tell the difference between the energy that you're experiencing and picking up and the wishes, hopes, dreams, fears that you might have? And here's one signal. When you're calm and relaxed, those intuitions that are clear for you, they'll always act like that still small voice. It'll be calm. There'll be an inner peace about it. The reason is because your intuitions are actually helping you gather facts, the reality that you can't see, you can't touch, you can't hold, but there's energy there. But that energy is going to be factual. The business meeting is cranky. It's upset. We actually have a technique that we do where people will say negative words, and then be quiet, and somebody else is outside the room. And then they come in, they have to have a straight face. They come in the room and they tell what they sense. Is it number one, is it positive or negative? So then they may say positive words, same straight face, and the person comes in to try and see if they can sense, is it negative or is it positive?
Yeah.
So just that sense of things is so powerful to help people begin to sort it out. If there's the fears,
Mm-hmm.
there's always going to be that little worrisome energy attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
What if, you know
Mhm.
what? Oh my God. There could be the little guilt attached to it. There could be that kind of David, you said that assumptive kind of anxiousness about, oh, I hope that happens. My
Yeah.
intuitions are telling me I'm going to win the lottery. I know it. I know it. I know it. You know, so it's that kind of learning to discern what's inside here in my thought patterns.
Yeah.
And again, that intuition, when it's clear, it's always going to have a sense of calmness about it.
Hmm.
And I think something that's huge, if somebody had mentioned energy, frequency, vibration to me, 5 years ago, I would have looked at you and been like, what? You're going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But
Yeah.
this is where we get to take this mindset and open it up and really understand that, yes, there's energy. Yes, there's vibration, especially with the facts. And this is what we share all the time, is that you have to be aware of your surroundings, because your surroundings showcase the story that you tell yourself. It sets up the standards that you were talking about. It creates the actual sacrifices that you need to take. And then it creates those self-disciplines that we take throughout our lives, that then is that ultimate conversation with our soul, our inner voice soul, especially when you do meditate, especially when you do take care and be aware of how you're showing up and who you're showing up as. And that's hard, because as we talk about, it's easy to talk about it right now, but when the rubber meets the road and you're in the actual, boardroom, and it's actually go time, are you going to have that same intuition, that same demeanor and aspects, especially based on past experiences and past, ways of being and seeing things? And so this is so true, especially when we bring it into, the job, into our entrepreneur, into our business life, and just overall life, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And we share that with everybody. And so I appreciate you, sharing that. So, one of the things that I would ask you, being an international traveler, and, what would be the cultural differences you've noticed when people do accept, this intuition? Can you tell the difference there, or is it all in one?
Yeah, again, I want to preface that. I mean, it's great. I want to preface that just a tad.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I found for myself that helps the intuition be clear is if I'm clear about what I want and what I need. Because if I have direction, then I'm forging a path through the jungle, creating a clear pathway, and it's easier for me to see what is and what isn't. But if I'm just going through the jungle and just kind of sorting around everything else, as we were talking about, the leaves are hitting me, the snakes are biting me, this is happening, that's happening. So no wonder I get out of sorts. So having that awareness, and that's, again, one of the things we talk about is everybody has a unique purpose. I mean, as entrepreneurs, that's one of the big things we try to help people with. What are you really passionate about? What do you really want to do? Oh, your father said you need to be a lawyer or a doctor, but you feel like the music just wants to pour out of you. What do you want? What's the need there that needs to express itself? We all have that, and no one person is exactly like that. So that's another piece of that. Also the piece of that discernment is creating that filtering system.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have direction, it filters quicker and easier, because this fits or this doesn't fit because I'm going here. So there is, some people try to protect themselves and, so on. The protection is in the direction. The protection is in me expressing the fullness of me.
Yeah.
That's the protection, because now I'm bright, I'm brilliant.
Yeah.
And I can see clearly everything that's out there rather than being in the dark room. And that's a point we have to start helping and taking care of that energy and that aura, if you will, keeping it bright. So in those travels, David, my answer to that is there's no difference. Different cultures will have a different acceptance or rejection of the spirituality side of things, of the way that you go about trusting those instincts and intuitions. So the more dogmatic things are that I don't have answers. Everybody else has my answers. God has my answers. So that can happen in cultures, but still inside of all that, there are people that have the same exact experiences that we're having, the farm experiences, the relationship experiences. My daughter Sandra shared earlier today about meeting her husband on Match.com, and they were both kind of he was getting ready to quit it. She was the last one that he saw before he was going to cancel it for the night. That was it. He was done. And she had just decided that day, you know what? I'm finally going to do this. And boom, there it was, right? So people in all cultures will have that kind of energy. I just interviewed earlier today in Empowered Soul Network a lady from the Philippines, beautiful lady. They're just so sensitive. Their definition of things is based on defining what's in the heart rather than this being the thing that makes the definition of life. So, and then she shared that loving, beautiful, healing vibration. So there are a lot of cultures, the indigenous cultures, our Native Americans here in the United States, the Maoris over in New Zealand, the Aboriginals over in Australia, they don't have that intellectual heaviness, that scientific prove it kind of thing. So their experience with nature, their experience with fauna and flora, all that is a part of their life. So the intuition speaks louder because of that. Yeah. So that's one thing that I've seen is the more we can do that, David, you and I as guys, just put this down a little bit, let the heart come out a little bit, because in some ways as a soul, there is no gender, there is no race, there is no creed, there is no color. It's just energy, intelligent energy. We happen to have these roles that we play with certain kinds of bodies, but it's all still the soul. And guys, the last 20 years, look at how many times you see football players giving each other a big hug. Yeah. These big 350-pound guys, they're crying, they're hugging. Didn't used to be that way.
Yeah. And I shared that and I asked that question because being here in Mexico as digital nomads, we share with people that the energy and the vibration of people here are night and day from back at home. Even the dogs, even the wild animals, the nature here is a different feeling and a different vibration going to that test that you were talking about earlier that people were doing in the offices. And so I'm so glad you said that.
Well, and it just reminds me of when you were sharing about the young lady sharing with how, not up here and just really coming from that heart center. I was reading an article about a Japanese gentleman who was sharing, a very, very successful Japanese gentleman. And he says, nothing against America or Americans. It's so, whenever I do business over there, it's so disconnected and it's very only about the money. It's all up here and it's only, he says, I really enjoy doing business around the world with other countries because of exactly what you're speaking about. He says, it's not all up here. They want to actually show up and, hey, the first meeting is come to my house. We're having dinner with the whole family. You meet the whole family. You feel the whole energy. It's all about the love. And then, from that, because their point of view is long lasting relationships.
Right.
And our point of view is more transactional relationships because that's what we've been conditioned to as society, and all these things. And so, it leads me to ask you, I love this subject. And as you talk, I'm just like a bobblehead over here, bobbing my head, because it's like this, it's almost confirmation of, when you are going through your quote unquote awakening or reconnection, you have these questions. And when someone like yourself, who has been in this realm and this field for so long, 50 plus years, it allows people like myself to go, I'm on the right track. That makes sense. I love it. And so that brings me to, for our audience, what are some of the common myths around intuition that a lot of people as in our society kind of just, oh no, and that's why they dismiss it? What's some of those things that you want to debunk or maybe address to where we can change the way we think and look at that?
No, that's thank you for that question. That's a fantastic question. One of the top myths is that intuition is the only thing to work with. Let's put your common sense in there. Let's put the facts of what you do know in there. Let's put other people's awareness in there. So I can take all of life, and allow it to speak to me. Intuition's a giant piece of it. But, Tara, one of the kind of the foundational concepts for me that began to help me to relax with life. Planet Earth is a school. Mm-hmm. Souls come here to learn and grow. We're here to learn and grow. And there's so many sometimes mystical thoughts and ideas that Planet Earth is a terrible place because look at all the suffering and the division and all that. Well, if you step away from those rights and wrongs, of course we need rights and wrongs in society because that helps us live with each other, respect each other. But if you step away from, you're bad because you turned, right and you weren't supposed to turn right on the red light, that's terrible. You're going to go to wherever because you did that. And just let people be a little bit more. If they have to pay the consequence, great, they pay the consequences. But that non-judgmental live and let live kind of feeling, that also helps intuition to speak more clearly because I'm not prejudging you. So this idea of right and wrong and your intuitions are going to help you solve all the problems of the world and save your neighbor and all those kinds of things. I have a policy about being psychic and being aware. I want to mind my own business. What you guys are doing, that may not be my business. So I set it up. I don't want to get engaged in that if it's not something that is a piece of the work that I can do to be of service to people. So I may not know where another person's experiences lie. That's why, walk a mile in another person's moccasin before you start to evaluate them. All those things are so true. The other thing that it's not so much a myth, but it's an aspect of expanding on what intuition is. If you think of us as the radio receivers, so we're constantly picking up energies, there are different ways to interpret that. So we just kind of lump it into intuitions, but I'll show you this little chart here. There's actually different ways that people perceive that energy. And it becomes a language for us that can help us in our relationships. It can help us in our connections. It can help us understand how we make decisions, how we communicate. And they're basically four. They talked about the gifts of the Spirit in the Bible, neuro-linguistic programming. In business, they talked about the Briggs-Myers disc relationship. There's all kinds of personality things. What I loved about the way that I learned this is it brought the spiritual side, the energy psychic side, the lifestyle side into all of it. So you have all four of those. You're a combination of all four of those. Mm-hmm. One's not more important than the other one, but one of them will tend to be a base for how you communicate and make your final decisions. So again, they're all intuitions, if you will, to use that word, but prophecy has to do with an inner knowing. People strong in that know, but they don't know how they know. Mm-hmm. If you ask them how they know, they go,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I just do.
Here's what bothers the rest of us. But trust me, everything's going to be all right. How do they know that how do I trust something that they know, but I don't know that they know, and I can't figure that out, and so on. So, but they have a strong concern for the future. Love to plan ahead. They're in business. They're terrific managers because they have that instinct for blending the team together, for executing the plan. Good executives in that way. Clairvoyance has to do with that picking up energy and putting a picture to it. People strong in clairvoyance are people who think in pictures almost. They have that mind's eye. They'll see it. They get very artistic because they have that instinct to recreate what they see in their mind. So you often find them in architecture or building this kind of a metaverse with all the unique colors and this and that. And one or both of you are pretty strong in that because you got that ability to really bring out this unique visualization of things. They have to be shown things. Don't tell them, show them. Because they need to have that, even if it's an abstract picture, they need to be able to focus on something visually. And if you're giving them directions, so Tara, if you're pointing over that direction, you're giving them directions, don't just say 2 blocks down, turn left, the third house on the right. You go, now, David, you remember the McDonald's sign with the big arches, and how they just put the new sign up there? Well, now you go one past that, and then you see the Starbucks. Well, you go between the Starbucks and the McDonald's, and that's the little Taco John's behind there that you're going to want to go to.
Yeah.
Describe the picture to them. Then they'll be with you. My wife is very strong in that. And I actually tell her, Susan, will you put your glasses on so you can hear me? Because she has to see, she has to focus, right?
Yeah.
David's just that. That's it, David. Yeah.
Clairaudience has to do with picking up energy and putting a thought to it. We actually call that intuition because intuition means instant understanding. You intuit it. You get the facts very fast. They hear the energy. They'll hear thoughts. They'll walk into the boardroom and think, oh, God, I don't want to be here. Or, God, I feel bad right now. And it's not even their thoughts. They're picking it up. They get easily depressed in a negative environment because they start thinking all these thoughts that aren't even them. They are very born leaders. They have that ability to size up the facts and understand it so quickly that they can now put that into action and create a system for that. So very, very sensitive. This is the perception that helps you discern things. They have a great BS meter. They can sense it coming a mile away, and they're quick to get detached. Feeling has to do with picking up energy and just feeling the vibes of it.
Yeah.
Not sponge it in. They absorb it. That's what you call the empaths.
Yeah.
The people that feel the energies. Very, very sensitive, along with the prophetic and the feeling part, super sensitive, ultra sensitive. They need to take the time to discern what they felt just a moment ago and what they feel now, because if they were relaxed and all of a sudden they're not, there's a good chance it's not even their feeling that they're feeling. They're picking up something and they're reacting to it rather than being clear and detailed. Wait a minute, time out. I'm going to do a little bit of meditation here because that's not me.
Yeah.
They're very gifted. They're very gifted at healing. They have a lot of energetically. You find them really gravitating to things like Reiki and laying on of hands and so forth. And they love to touch. They would rather wear something that feels good, even though it looks bad.
Yeah.
It feels good. It feels good, right? So you have all 4 of these. Everybody's a blend of those. It's amazing to be able to find out what your order of perceptions are that you were born with, because everybody's born with a certain aspect of all this. People may have an inkling or an awareness of this, but to find out how you're born with it and the nuances of all those personality characteristics, it's a huge healing for relationships. Knowing that Susan is very strong in vision, I'm very strong in that clairaudient part. So oftentimes I have a flood of ideas all at once, and I'm trying to tell her all these ideas, and she gets frustrated because She hasn't created a picture yet for the first idea that I was doing. I'm already on to the 10th idea, So me learning to be patient, take it one step at a time, draw it out for it, draw a sketch, of something. So she has the time to be able to process the picture. On the reverse, sometimes she's painting the whole entire mural all at once, and the brush is going here and it's going over there. And I don't even know what this little section of this color means. I don't understand. Why'd you use that color? So just having that awareness of how everybody does things differently. We have 5 children, and we have a child in every one of these, plus 2 feeling children. To know that when they were growing up, my oldest daughter is very strong in vision. She came home one time and she had a report card, and instead of A's, it was all C's. And this is weird. So I finally, intuitively, through guidance, I talked to Susan. We need to go in and talk to Mrs. Ross about what's going on here because something's not right. Mrs. Ross had rearranged the whole room. Sarah was now sitting in the very back of the class. There was some bigger guy. She had to lean over to see the blackboard. She couldn't see. And because she couldn't see, her whole effectiveness started to fall by the wayside. 2 of my feeler children, if I wasn't relaxed when I was talking to them, shut the door.
Yeah.
You're not relaxed. I didn't feel good to them. They're not going to talk.
Yeah.
Now, if I was very relaxed, they would start to build it. And I learned that to be very patient while they got it out, because people strong in feeling, oftentimes there's no word or description that fits the feeling that they're having. Yeah. It takes some time to work it out. So just a blessing in disguise for people to learn about that. It's a gift for me that I learned, almost 55 years ago now, and it's still giving.
That information right there, Paul, if we don't talk about anything else, is going to be so helpful for the people, because yes, I know those 4. I've been I've been looking at, and identifying my own, but the way that you were able to break it down in simplistic terms of the characteristics to look for, that is why you see David and I over here laughing and nodding our head so much, because we resonate with it. We understand, like when you're talking about Claire, visual side, Dave, that's David all day long. If I am going to share, I'm clairaudient. So I will be, and I'm talking a mile a minute, and he's going like, I need a visual. And so when you were sharing that, the relatability we had to understand and I share this, and I'm going to pass this over to David, when we understand the playing field that we're working with the teammates that we have and how they operate, it makes life so much easier. And that 5 minutes of you explaining that will not only have a major impact on David and I, because we go, that's why you need it that way. Fine, I can give it to you that way because that's easy. Now I understand.
Yeah, we actually have a private session that we work with in our programs that help people to identify that more clearly. There's a whole worksheet, 2-sided worksheet that describes those things in depth. So you can see the nuances of each one of those in you, what's strong, what you need to build on. Because if you have the balance of all 4 of those, boy, you could communicate with anybody and build a relationship with anyone because you could connect at that level. And it's phenomenal to be able to work with guidance and that intuitive psychic side of life to bring all that out to people so they can add tools to their toolkit to help them with wherever they are with their experience of all this. Like you said to her, with your experience, you just dive that deeper. And I'm still learning more every day about the interactions of those 4. Sometimes I'll meet a person that's very strong in prophecy and feeling. Those are their 2 heavy hitters, right? And they need to build the visionary part. And they're different than the prophetic feeling style that needs to build the intuitive part. Mm-hmm. So the nuances of things and the building relationship, that's why we call them the language of relationships. It's a huge healing for relationships. I've had people tell me, if I had known this while I was still married to my partner, there's a possibility maybe we'd still be married. But there was just no communication, nothing. And we just had to let it go and cut it because we weren't supporting and serving each other by staying together.
Well, that's part of the communication and being aware of the other person. Like you said, the 5 love languages. A lot of people don't know their love language, and this is
Yeah.
a communication factor. And when you're able to be aware of that and be able to give grace, be able to really be able to understand each other and be willing to communicate and understand the differences, I think that's huge. And so, what role does intuition play in our mental and emotional well-being?
Again, I have people tell me that I ask great questions, and when I get great questions, I just love it. I say, that's a great question. I love it. I love it. I love it. If I start to allow that half of the book of life to speak a little bit more loudly, number one, the acceptance of myself, that I'm not stupid, I'm not silly, I'm not crazy. This is not the occult. This is not some kind of weird thing that's trying to impose and control me. That changes a person's self-esteem. That uplifts them a little bit, that they can start to trust themselves and realize that there's a value there. When my daughter was, again, young, she had friends, and she would express these knowingness and things like that. And there were a couple kids that would they'd overhear this, and they'd start to call her a witch and this. And she came home one time, she was crying. She didn't know how to handle all this. Well, her friends started to support her and realized that really it was not any big deal. They had the same things, right? But that outer pressure that somehow this is bad to have this. Sometimes that religiousness, that dogmatic side that says that's not right. You're not a good person if you do that. That creates a lot of mental pressure here, David. It puts a lot of pressure on people to think that there is something wrong with them. My spouse, Susan, a long time ago, she said she grew up with that sensitivity, and it made her sick, really. And it was always, what's wrong with Susan? What's wrong with Susan? There's something wrong with Susan. When she started getting into all this and changing her mindset about it, suddenly it started, that's what's wrong with Susan. What's strong with Susan? Because this is a strength. One of you said it earlier, this is superpower. And what's cool, everybody's a superhero if you start working with this. That's the cool thing. So then the emotional health, because I'm starting to, again, be aware of what's me and what's not me, I stop becoming so reactive. I stop getting caught up in that emotionalism that's outside. I can go, well, hey, that's not my business. That's that person. You start tuning in. Is there anything I can do to help them? You start asking your guidance, those higher sources of inspiration. Is this something I can? No, just stay out of it. Because we're so easily, especially Tara, especially us guys, we want to fix it. We want to make sure everybody's okay. We provide. We're the safety. We're the warriors. We're going to make sure. But I have to remember, I can't fix people. They have to fix themselves. I can inspire them with my experiences and so on. But my children, at a certain point, they had to learn to tie their own shoes.
Man, that is powerful, Paul. I mean, the fact of just the reason I say it's so powerful, because I have lived in those shoes for the past probably 8 years of really starting to kind of get in touch with my reconnecting, the reconnection of who Tara was. And when you talk about when Susan, everybody would be when she was younger, because of the feeling side and that sensitivity and what's wrong. I remember growing up, I am very strong in clairaudient and feelings, because I would look at somebody or walk by somebody and burst out in tears, and my parents would be like, what the heck happened? What's going on? And I'd be over there and I couldn't talk. I couldn't even express myself because of all of the emotion that would be coming in. And I will tell you, Paul, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, there was conversations I would have with David at the beginning of our relationship going, I think I'm bipolar. I think I'm crazy. I think there's something wrong with me. I need to go get medication because I will be fine one moment and then I am just hysterical the next moment. Is it my hormones? Is it bipolar? And it's because we've been so disconnected and we're not taught this. We're not in tune with it. And society for a long time has been, no, we don't talk about that. Just put it in the closet. And if it's not coming from here, it's not viable or valuable. And how many people are out there right now just lost because they think they're crazy or they're cuckoo, and in reality they're just disconnected. Somebody actually unplugged. We need to go plug them back in, get them understanding that no, this is normal, everybody has it, and please embrace it. Like, the power of what you have shared today has just absolutely, I wish, like you say, you want to bottle up our intro. I want to bottle up this information and give it to everybody and say, here's your gift. Just drink this. It'll settle in. You'll start to understand things, because when we are understanding of what's going on, that's when you talk about that emotional reaction is no longer really there. And I have experienced that physically. Like, I used to have an emotional reaction all the time. So, as we wrap this up, Paul, because we want to be, very respectful of your time and giving it to us today. I want you to share anything that we did not ask you that you were like, hey, I need to share this on the way out because this will really change, a life.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tara. I want to say a little bit more about the emotional health and mental health, David, because you were alluding to it growing up. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I am a parent. My spouse has been a teacher. And I have teacher friends that actually work with all this. I have a teacher friend that used to, with her own intuition and guidance, she would seat her children in her classroom by those 4 perceptions. Because if a visionary person was having trouble with something, she'd have another visionary explain it to her. And so she had her classroom kind of organized like that to just help make it easier, right? And the thing I'm alluding to there is that we have so many outside definitions of what kids are, what we are, that we put labels on them. So ADHD, attention deficit syndrome, all that kind of stuff. A whole lot of what I've seen in my children and in their classmates and in my teacher friends and the way they describe it, a lot of those kids are just super sensitive and they're picking everything up. They have no buffer. The home life doesn't help them to sort that out. And so they're just like hooks on the waves, being buffeted and bombarded and all this. Now, the medication, sure, it helps them. But I now know of schools that are beginning to teach some kind of meditation without maybe prayer or meditation, without trying to get it, respecting other people's backgrounds and cultures. But relaxation, taking a deep breath in class before the test. So just beginning to, and in corporations, now to allude to that leadership style, more than ever, corporate America out there is starting to value the personal well-being of the employee. Are we respecting them as people, not just workers to earn a profit? Yeah. So you see a lot of that wellness stuff that's going on right now, and so on. It's because of this, having yoga, after work, all those kinds of things, or giving budgetary for the things that back the wellness programs, having massage therapists come in. So this whole big picture of that side of life, the intuitive side of life, the personal side of life is powerful. And so that leads me to say the last big point. I'm energy. I'm here to learn and grow. I have inner guidance. I have a life purpose. The last one, as souls, we're free. I'm free. I can choose to do now in society, if I choose this, I may have to pay the consequences, but I can choose to do that, right? So there's a freedom here that if I respect that, I don't have to kowtow to other people's opinions or ideas. I'm free to move forward. All I need to do is just respect other people. If I can't help them, don't do harm. So but that freedom of the soul inside is really what ignites the combinations of everything we're talking about today. Being free to be intuitive, being free to feel the power of that within coming out.
Wow. Just remarkable. Chef Andy over here on our LinkedIn side was just sharing that, a lot of third world countries, second world countries, a lot of countries outside of the United States, we'll say that, are getting on board. And like you share that, as we start to move in a different way of society, and David always, talks about, when I start getting off onto my woo-woo side, and I won't go there, but my point being is things have changed, and things are changing in the sense that what was kind of taboo back in the day when, when we had our hippie parents, because my parents were hippies, at the end of the day, they, I think everybody was a hippie pretty much in the 70s. They just, were you free to express it or not free to express it? But there's so many of those lifestyle ways that, that the baby boomers are carried with them that are now kind of teaching the younger that now it's coming socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Starting to become into our curriculum. It's starting to become our workplaces. I will tell you, I left a workplace because of the toxicity, because they did not care. And it was such a culture shock when I went from a place that cared to a place that didn't care. I was like, whoa, what's going on? Because it's, as you say, those empaths, those feelings, those prophetic people, they can kind of just, that's what's supposed to be so. And when that's not happening, they can feel that disconnect of why it goes. So, I could sit here and talk forever. I'm not Mr. Jones,
Yeah.
So with that being said, Paul, is there any thing that you want to share with people, how they can contact you, where they can go and learn more of this amazing information?
Yeah, absolutely. We my wife and I have a website. It's soul2soulliving.com, SOUL, and the number 2, and then SOUL living.com. Also, there's another organization that I'm a part of called the Way Showers College. So it's Way Showers, WAYSHOWERS.com, college.com. And it's the training ground where 50 years ago, I started learning how to be on a radio show, be on a TV show, learn how to stand up and do presentations, learning how to connect the dots of all these things and the private consultation work. That was a piece of it. And then probably you guys know the closest thing to my heart at the moment is the Empowered Soul Network. It's a Facebook group, Empowered Soul Network. And we're building a community. You guys have been highly supportive of all that as some of our founding members. And we're creating a space for this kind of thing to happen, for voices to be able to be heard, to be able to be respected for the genius of unique, the diversity. I've done about 15 different countries now in terms of interviews with people. I'm blowing my mind with all this. There's such a beautiful, diverse, huge community of people that are out making that effort or solidly in that effort of trying to help people with this conversation in general, healing, whatever that is, Tara, but this personal development, personal energy, and the expression of that, the spiritual side of life, not religious. 70% of Americans a few years ago said they're spiritual but not religious. That's a big shift. That's a giant shift. A few years ago when that came out, I think it was in USA Today. So, yeah, Powered Soul Network. We're growing that community. And if you want to be interviewed in there, we'd love to have you come on.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, we greatly appreciate you joining us today with the Hello LLC on our Hello Pivot live broadcast that we have every Thursday. It's been an absolute honor to have this amazing conversation because as we continue to share with people, we want to help everyone live life optimally from the mind, from the body, and ultimately the soul. And today was ultimately about the soul and really us reconnecting, as Tara talked about, and being aware of how we show up and what we show up as. So until next time, we want to thank you guys all. Come and join us. Make sure you go and visit the Hello LLC. come and join us in our Hello Plaza in Metaverse. The future's already here, where we get rid of these boring Zoom crusty dusty calls and we get into this 3D immersive, experience where we can do the same exact things and more. And so until next time, you guys know the drill. Love,
kindness,
integrity,
but most importantly,
commitment,
and consistency.
And until next time, toodles! We'll see you guys later.
Thanks, guys.